Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, Epic Migrations, Mapping the Mystery of Animal Movements, presented by Nat Hab Expedition Leader Eric Ramirez. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Take it away, Eric.
Thank you so much for that incredible presentation, Rob. Again, my name is Eric Ramirez. And again, today's topic is epic migrations. And the reason why I'm going to present this, I'm going to tell you this in a few moments, but for me, it's very special because I'm feeling so identified with migratory species because as humans, I consider humans as a natural born migrants. So I'm presenting from Sweden because I'm on holidays with my wife and my dog. So I'm gonna talk a little bit of myself. My name is Leader Ramirez, and I was born in Mexico City. I was always passionate about nature. I'm a natural born wild person who likes to be outside. So when I was 18, I moved to La Paz, Baja California Sur in Mexico to study marine biology. And after 5 years and a half, I finished my studies, and then I started to work as a scientist in a genetic lab as a technician. And believe me, I loved that job so much because I was making my dream come true. But unfortunately, I felt like a bird in a cage. And I told this story to all my guests. No matter how beautiful the cage is, at the end, it's just a cage. And I decided to step away from that path and go in a different journey. So I think like this quote is defining me in so many ways. Life is an unexpected journey because you don't know how you're gonna end. You don't know if the path that you're taking is going to take you to one place or another. So after that, I started to work as an expedition leader in La Paz, working with different species, obviously related to the ocean, most likely sharks, fish, coral, whales, and birds. And since 2021, I started to work as an expedition for Nat Hab, guiding trips to see the beautiful gems that we have in Mexico, aka the beautiful monarch butterflies. And also, I have had the opportunity to guide a couple trips to see the beautiful whale sharks in south of Mexico. So everything led me to this question: why migration? As I told you before, I consider humans as a natural born migrants. But the reason that I have chosen this topic is because 4 months ago I decided to change my path, and I moved from Mexico to Germany with my wife and also with my dog as well. So this is very interesting because many questions emerged once I moved to Germany, and I realized that I invested so much time, so many resources, so many thoughts as well, and I said, "Wow, it is really tough to move at least once to another place." So what happened in nature? What happened with animals that undoubtedly they have to move from one place to another year by year or month by month or day by day? So it requires a lot of energy. So I was thinking, I need to answer these questions. The questions are, how do they perform these migrations? Why do they move? How do they make it? Are they well adapt or not? Should they pass this information to the next generations or not? So first of all, we're gonna define the concept of migration. This is a complex concept because many authors have defined migration according to how they perceive the world with their senses. So I love this quote: migration might be one of the great wonders of natural world, but as a biological concept, it's surprisingly fluid and elusive. Surprisingly fluid and elusive. And indeed it is. It's very elusive. But today we don't want to make it really complicated. And we're going to define migration as the partial or total mobilization of movement of the population from one place to another. But they have to go back. And this is going to be seasonally or during the year. All right. So with that all being said, we're gonna go to this. I was thinking, when do they start to move? So it's very interesting because many authors believe that during the ice ages, animals they to move to the other places because the north part of the hemisphere was partially completely frozen. It was impossible to keep a lot of different living organisms there. So one, if all these organisms had to move to the tropics where the temperatures and the conditions were more stabilized, and once the ice was completely depleted from the north, they were able to start to move to different areas. They expanded their distribution range to other places. So this was like baby steps, step by step. It was not that easy, and it took a lot of time. In terms of evolution, we not say years. Sometimes it takes hundreds or thousands of years so the animals can finally evolve or can get new adaptations. So it's interesting because once they started to move northward or southward, organisms who were well adapted were and survive, they pass this genetic information, these adaptations to the offspring, and this behavior was fixed in the whole population. So now they're doing this year round or seasonally, if we say. So first question, why do they move? That's the most important question if we want to describe animal movement. And before I start, I need to say that for me, it's so fascinating because it's all about energy and time. When I'm guiding my trips to the monarch butterflies, I always encourage our guests to see everything because even though it looks that nothing is moving, inside the molecules, the atoms, the cells, everything is in constant movement. So the organisms also need to be in constant movement. So the reason why they move is basically there are basically three: to get better conditions, to find better places to feed, and the third, to either mate or to give birth. So this is interesting because I'm comparing my situation with the animal kingdom situation, and again, it's almost similar. I came to Germany to get better conditions. First, second, I came here to find better sources of food. In this case, probably opportunities. And third, just to mate. Already married. So I'm a successful migrant if we see this with the eyes of animal kingdom. So I put these three different examples because whale sharks, they tend to move to places where the food availability is higher than the others. Monarch butterflies, I'm also going to give a lot of examples about monarch butterflies because I lead in the trips with Nat Hab. So they moved southward just to have more stabilized conditions. And in the case of the salmons, they basically moved to from the ocean to the rivers just to release the eggs, basically. So another question: what triggers this behavior? So most likely the environmental conditions, and this is going to be shaped by seasons. Okay, so seasons, they have different temperatures, different pressure, different conditions, and most likely everything is going to be fixed in order to produce a natural response in the migrants. Migrants are well adapted to receive this message and to respond to that message. So they already know that, for example, if the temperature decreases 1 or 2 degrees, that means that this is a cold, and I start to produce either more hormones, or I have to store more fat, or I have to either mate, or I have to do something uh, migration coming soon. All right. Also, social skills, social behavior. So when the temperature changes, uh, when the rainfall appears, also animals, they feel that they must do something because everything is going to change dramatically very soon. All right. So how fit are they to migrate? This was a very good question, because when I started to study the monarch butterflies, I was thinking this is just a single insect. Come on, they don't have a proper brain as different mammals. They cannot remember many things like us. Come on, how do they do this? So basically, remember, we have to have an environmental trigger that is going to send a message to the migratory species, and then they will have to respond. So these organisms are well adapted because they have been doing this since a long time ago. So inside, what happened is they start to store more fat. They start to produce different hormones. In the case, for example, of the monarch butterflies, the generation that is moving southward, they remained juvenile. They're not sexual mature. They remain, let's say, torpid. The correct term is in diapause. And they remain like this in order to expand the lifespan better, in order to stay longer in Mexico as well. So, yes, they are very fit, but they have been developing these skills year by year in order to survive and in order to pass this to the next generations. So, how do they migrate? This is so fascinating because during my vacations, I was reading a very interesting book about animal senses. The name of this book is An Immense World. And I guess if I could remember, the name of the author is Ed Jung. I highly recommend you to read this book because, like, many paradigms of how humans sense the world are going to break down. So, first, migrants, they're natural born navigators, and they're really good in terms of orientation. How do they do this? They follow landmarks, they follow rivers, ocean currents, air currents, they follow the stars, they follow the sun position, they follow everything. So could you imagine just imagine yourself, you're doing a road trip to Sweden from Germany, and then you don't know, your GPS isn't working any longer, and it's just like you put your head out of the car, and it's like, okay, I have a sense that tells me that the sun is here, and I have to go to the left because that's my destination. So that this is how much it works with the in nature. Animals are really good because they have these natural compasses, sun compasses. Also, they have magnetic compasses. The hammerhead sharks, they orientate themselves using the magnetic fields that naturally the work produces. So it is just fascinating how they use many senses in different ways in order to move to different parts. Very quickly, there's another example: the fire chaser beetle. This beetle is so tiny, and it can detect very, very, very small variations of radiation in the atmosphere. So if they detect that there's a fire like 20 kilometers away from the origin, they will move there. They will notice this. So this is just unbelievable. So another question is, are they traveling solo or in a group? So when people ask biologists, how does it work in nature? We always like to say it all depends on the species. That's our most common answer. And yes, it all depends on the species. For example, for insects, for big mammals like the wildebeest, or like many birds, it's more convenient to travel together. Why? The reason is that they can exchange a lot of information between the adults and the juveniles. There's a lot of social interaction, a lot of information exchange when they're traveling together, and most likely it's to avoid predation, the likelihood to be eaten by another organism. For example, in the case of the monarch butterflies, they will travel during the day, and during the night they will rust. They will roost in different trees, and they like to cluster in the branches of the tree. They like to stay together in order to prevent heat loss. This is just an advantage in order to survive all together. But some also, for example, I don't know if you have seen the migration of dogs or of the geese when they're in this B shape, like, or cranes as well. It's absolutely fantastic to see them. A lot of people is like, oh, they like to show up. No, the reason why they're going in this V-shaped light form, it's because they are trying to break the friction. They reduce the friction of the air. So again, we're talking about time and we're talking about energy. This is to be more efficient in terms of energy consumption. Some other organisms like megafauna, especially in the water, like great white sharks, some types of whales, they like to travel solo. And in the case of the great whites, for example, they like to do this like this in order to avoid competition. All right. Also, they are really good learning learning the routes by themselves. But also, for example, in the case of the whales, that doesn't mean that they have no communication. They also vocalize, especially the humpback whales, and they basically communicate possible routes as well. This is what scientists think about the purposes of these vocalizations. But for example, humpbacks, they travel one or two or three at once. They don't travel in big groups. So another question is, are they obligated to move? Yes and no. And here we need to be very, very specific, because sometimes we hear that the monarch butterflies migrate, or the California sea lions migrate, or the bears migrate. Okay, we need to be more specific because that's not true. The um, populations of certain species migrate, not the species by itself. For example, we have different monarch butterflies living in Europe, in Spain, in Africa, also in New Zealand, in Australia, but those are not migrant. We have to refer to the eastern population of the North America population of monarch butterflies who are actually migrating. In this case, have you ever seen this in San Francisco, Pier 39? Beautiful, a lot of California sea lions just resting in this wooden platforms. Yes, yes, like it's very common to see this, but in a certain time of the year, there are not so many there. And the reason is because not all of them are migrating. Not all of the species is migrating. The ones that are the males, the mature males are all in Pier 39, ended up migrated to north southward or to Oregon as well, only to mate. So we have, for example, in La Paz, in Baja California Sur, a very productive sea lion colony, which host all these migrants that came from the north just to mate during the summer season in that area. So once they finish mating, they move back to this to Pier 9, but only the males. So this also answers the question. No, not all the organisms have to move. Sometimes only the males, sometimes only the females, sometimes only the juveniles, sometimes only the males, the adults are the ones who are going to perform these migrations in the same species. All right. So again, we talked about the reasons, about what is triggering this behavior. We talked about all the energy that is invested in order to move from point A to point B, but also we need to talk about the risks. Yes, when animals move from one place to another, they are in a big risk to be predated by different organisms. Of course, we need to say that. And also the risk to get some diseases or to die for anthropogenic causes like, for example, habitat degradation or red rock kills and so on. Yes, it like moving requires many risks. I mean, me moving to Germany as well is not a guarantee that I will get a job as soon as I arrive. There's always a risk. But I think the benefits are great if we invest this energy. So if it requires a lot of energy, why should they move? Okay, in the case of the animals, they must move because if they live in places where the conditions changes dramatically during the changes of seasons, if they decided to stay, for example, in the north where the winters are very harsh and the food is very scarce, the cost of benefit ratio is not going to be good for them because that means that they might not well adapted to resist these cold temperatures, and the food is not available for them, it's going to create this vortex of not good conditions for them, and as a result we will have a sentence of death. So that means that even though they're investing so much energy and the risks are very high, again, it's better than to stay in these places, of course. I remember the first time I told my wife I'm going to present something related to migration, and the first question that she asked me was, Eric, what are the benefits of migration? And I was thinking, okay, I was just like throwing so much ink like an octopus when it feels threatened. I was like saying so many things from my background as a biologist, and I was like, I have not so much idea what are the benefits of this migration, but I will study this. And right now I know precisely what are the benefits, and the benefits are so great. So first of all, animals who are moving from places are really good in dispersing seeds. I mean, many of the plants that we have nowadays are like spread all over the world for the good and the bad, to be honest. And also, as animals, humans as animals, we've also been part of this for good, for bad, and also pollination. I mean, if you think about hummingbirds, moths, butterflies, bats, it's just impossible not to think how good they're doing to the environment. I mean, if we like vegetables, if we like fruits, if we like flowers, we need to thank these incredible pollinators. So, very small example. If you like tequila or mezcal from Mexico, I need to tell you something. Those the agave plants who are used to produce mezcal and tequila are pollinated by bats. So, yeah, like this is a great benefit for all of us. And the most important is the energy that are adding to the food chain. That's absolutely fantastic. So either they work as a prey or as a predator. They're adding so much energy to different ecosystems, creating a good balance and a good structure in different environments. Migrants are really important for this reason. Just imagine the salmons, like imagine the bears without salmons. What happened if one year there's no salmon? What happened with the bears if they don't have this food available for them? Or if there are not monarch butterflies living in the forest in Mexico, what happened with all these birds that are predating upon the monarch butterflies? Yeah, that will be a huge imbalance in nature. And this is the bonus: genetic diversity. My thesis was based on genetic diversity of one animal aquatic organism. But genetic diversity, very simple. It's just the how diverse the animals are in terms of genetics, in terms of genes. Yeah. So I put two different samples because one species is highly migratory and the other one it's more sedentary. So gray whales are highly migratory species, and this population, the population of non-Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, it's a very isolated population. Okay, they have low levels of diversity. That means that they don't have any input from other populations. So, what happens if all of a sudden we have a disease or something changes dramatically in the environment? They won't survive because they don't have all the machinery inside to face these new changes. Instead of the gray whales, that they are highly migratory and they have output from different populations. So yes, migratory species also they have a great advantage against the ones that are not moving. So now we're gonna talk about examples. Monarch butterflies are they have they are the insect that perform the largest migration in animal kingdom. And they're, come on, look at them, they're so beautiful. Sorry. And so monarch butterflies, actually, the ones I told you before, the ones that come to Mexico, they're sexually immature and they remain like this, just expanding their lives to live longer there because the weather conditions are perfect to keep them immature. Yeah. So I'm not going to deep dive in this because if you want to know more about the monarch butterfly migration, I'm going to present a webinar in 2 weeks and I'm going to answer all your questions. But basically, this animal is fantastic and is phenomenal because the ones who perform the trip from the north, from Canada to Mexico, are not going to be the ones that are going to go back to Canada. The ones who came all the way down to Mexico, they will stay here for several months. And once the temperature raises up, they will break this diapause. They will be now mature. They will mate, and they will go to the north here in Texas, where they lay down the eggs, and then they will die. And then the second generation will continue the journey back to Canada. Normally, it takes between 3 and 4 generations to reach the final destination in Canada. So this is very impressive, because how do they remember this? How do they know that they must go to this place if they haven't they didn't this before? So yeah, it remains a mystery. Scientists have some hypotheses, but we're gonna talk about this in another time. And then we have the wildebeest. The wildebeest are just phenomenal, because they perform one of the largest mobilization in terms of mass, of just of mass biomass. They just move up 1.5 million of individuals, but they don't go from point A to point B. It's more like a loop. Some scientists have described this as a circle of life and death, because they're following a circular route which starts in nearby Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, and they go northwest until they finally reach the northeast part of the Serengeti nearby Kenya, and then they move in southward back again to Ngorongoro crater reserve. And this is so incredible, because look at this massive mobilization of animals. Could you imagine just be there, witness of this massive mobilization of energy? It's just phenomenal. They're not doing this alone. Actually, some I like to call them chaperones. Some other animals like zebras or gazelles also follow this massive migration, and they just do this for two main reasons. They're following the water sources, and also they're following the distribution of green and green and tall grasses to grazing during this time during the whole time in the year. So just look at this. So many mammals, so many energy, and energy that's going to be available for, of course, many predators. So this is really important, because this is also a good source of food for many organisms who depend upon this massive migration, like crocodiles, hyenas, lions, cheetahs, and other organisms. So back to the ocean, okay? This is interesting, because this is like an outlier of the definition of migration, because scientists define migration as only as horizontal movements, but here zooplankton is changing the rules. Actually, zooplankton have vertical migration. But what is exactly zooplankton? So zooplankton belongs to this core group that we call plankton. Plankton are all the microscopic organisms which are not able to swim by themselves, therefore they just drift with the currents. Okay, so here we have one big division, and then we have zooplankton. Zoo means animal, and then we have phytoplankton means plant. So zooplankton, animals, phytoplankton, plants, microalgae. Okay, so zooplankton perform a 24 hours migration. So basically, during the day, they will move from the surface, from the epipelagic zone, which is between the surface and 200 meters or 600 feet. They will move to the bottom, which is the mesopelagic zone, between 400 meters and 6,000 feet, 3,000 feet, awaiting. They're just going to remain there during the daylight, all right? And the reason why they do this is that they escape from the predators. But once the sun is down, during the night, they will vertical migrate to the surface to feed upon the phytoplankton, the microalgae. Okay, and in terms of biomass, in terms of organisms, of weight of organisms, this could be considered as the largest, because it's like a lot of plankton is moving to the surface during the night. And during the day, again, they will move to the bottom to escape from the predators. And scientists like to call this a hide and seek game, where during the day they go to the bottom, during the night they go to the surface, and the next day will do the same thing. So why zooplankton? Why this dialed vertical migration is so important? The reason is that it's supporting the food chain. Zooplankton is the main food source for many different filter feeders, like manta rays, like whales, like also some sharks as well. But also, basically, what they do is they are sequestering CO2. Okay, I know that it sounds so complicated, but I will try to define it as easy as possible. So microalgae on the surface, they're like plants, they are doing photosynthesis, they are capturing the CO2, and once these microalgae are consumed by the zooplankton is going to the bottom during the day, and once they secrete and they poop everything, like all the CO2 goes to the bottom, and it remains sequestered on the bottom and not on the atmosphere, avoiding excess of CO2 at the atmosphere. So that's fantastic. And then we have the Arctic tern, which is a fascinating bird because there's no other animal who can perform what the Arctic tern does. So they can travel around like more of 30,000 miles in 1 year. So how do they do this? Basically, the Arctic terns, they inhabit in the North Hemisphere, in Greenland, in Iceland, in some parts of Canada as well. These are the breeding grounds. But what happened during the winter? This place is completely cold and it's completely dark, and they will start to mobilize a lot of organisms southward to the Antarctica, to the south. Why? Because in the south it's going to be summer, and when it gets dark and cold in the Antarctica, because it's already winter, they will start to move to the north where it's summer back again. So there is no other animal in the animal kingdom that sees more light than. I'm so jealous because they actually have light year round. All right. How do they do this? Basically, they're well adapted to perform these long distance migrations. They have very long wingspan. The muscles are really really strong, and basically they do this in order to have calm winds during the summer, to feed upon the animals that are more visible during the daylight. If you have light, you can see better while you're hunting. So even though like it looks like, oh my god, this is very harsh for them, it requires a lot of energy, it's really worth it to perform this long distance migration at the end of the day. So again, during the winter, they will move from the breeding grounds in the north to the south parts, but this is very interesting. They're not going to perform this year by year because it requires a lot of energy to do this. So there might be some years between, like they will perform this 1 year, and there's going to be a gap between 2 and 3 years where they are going to rest in the north. And during this time, they will molt the feathers because the feathers are not longer good to to fly. So they will molt the feathers, and they might perform this migration in another time. So this is interesting. They don't go in a straight line. They are just hopping from one continent to the other. So seriously, like birds are just phenomenal organisms. I have more examples of bird migration, but I think this is the most astonished that we have in the animal kingdom. So then we have, again, in the ocean, humpback whale. There's no other marine mammal that can perform the migration that this animal does. The humpbacks, they can travel up 10,000 miles in order to reach different areas. So this is very interesting because this is undoubtedly the most beautiful whale in the animal kingdom. I know that some of my friends who are watching this and would say, no, they're blue whales or the fin whales. But for me, humpbacks are fantastic because you can see them. I mean, they just like to show off. They just like to, just like to jump out of the water. They like to use these spectral fins to agitate the water. And, a lot of people ask me, why do they do this? And I think like the most accurate question is because they can. It's part of their behavior. Um, this the humpback whales, they will feed upon these high peaks of food that we have in the north, also in the south hemisphere. Um, in these cold waters, we have uh, like few peaks where the waters are really have a lot of nutrients, and they feed upon this. And then during the winter, they will migrate. The ones from the north, they will migrate to the tropics to mate and also to calve. So just to amplify this 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 with a better example, we have here in the north, we have the humpback whales from different populations of humpback whales, and we have here in the north the feeding grounds. And during the winter, they will mobilize to more tropical waters where they are going to mate, and also they're going to give birth, and they'll keep care of the cubs. This is in the north hemisphere, but in the south, all right, it's going to be the same, but all the way around. So from the south, during the winter, we have the feeding grounds, and then during the summer, they'll sorry, during the winter, they move to more warm waters to mate and also to give birth to the calves. So, good question is, what is the importance of all these natural phenomena? What is the importance for us as humans? And again, if we like vegetables, if we like fruits, for example, we have a lot of benefits of pollinators moving from one place to another. Just imagine our lives without them. Just imagine life without monarch butterflies. Just imagine the life without the bats who are traveling from the north to the central part of Mexico as well. Um, just imagine what happened if we wouldn't have the opportunity to have this zooplankton moving in a dial vertical migration, sequestering the CO2 from the surface to the bottom. Imagine all these birds who are not consuming are consuming all these pests that are killing the crops. So yes, they're really important and they're part of the system. So also animals are really important for us, for avid travelers. I mean, the reason why we're here is because we love to enjoy these moments in nature. We love to just either be there, just to smell, to see, to hear what's happening in nature, and also to take a picture. It's just phenomenal to be there, and animals are providing this. So yes, it's a beautiful communion between animals and humans what we have, and this is the result of animal migration as well. Migrants are used also as a bioindicators. I know that it looks like a fancy word, but it's basically something that is indicating about what's happening in the environment. So we told you before, animals are well adapted to these circumstances to perform this long distance migration. They have been displayed incredible makeups, but despite the situation, some of them are very fragile. They're very susceptible to detect what is going on in the environment. So, for example, birds, if they see that there is not enough food for them before they travel, they won't do it because that mean they know that this is a sentence of death. That means that it's impossible to them to travel this long distance without enough food. So, for example, scientists have seen that if animals are the migratory species or migratory populations are not moving from one place to another, that means that they have to start to see what's going on in the environment. So this is a very useful tool for to monitor the the environment as well. And obviously, there's so many challenges: habitat loss, also habitat degradation. Many organisms have been suffering the consequences of our actions. For example, the monarch butterflies. There's in the Midwest part of of U.S. There's something that we call the it is the soy corn belt, which basically replaced prayers for croplands. And this is a very important pathway for the monarch butterflies. And without flowers, without nectar, without sources of food, it is impossible for them to be fully charged of energy in order to survive during the winter. So yes, humans were shaping many different pathways, or creating dams. In Rio Colorado in the north, um, the Rio Colorado was used to be a river that was providing a lot of fresh water to the Sea of Cortez. Not anymore. So animals depend upon these paths in order to move to one place to another, but also to take advantage of the landmarks on the field, because without this, for them it's impossible to reach their final destinations as well. So how can we do to protect them? It's just important to be more aware. If our communities or if our houses are very close to these pathways, it's just it's just really important to see, for example, also what are we doing in order to enhance this long distance migration. Well, also what something you can do is you can support NGOs. There are many NGOs that are now working in order to um, escort some organisms. I was just reading, for example, I don't remember exactly the name of the NGOs in US, but there's some NGOs who are like creating some paths so the elks or the mooses can reach the breeding grounds as well. They're protecting the salmon as well. They're protecting like different paths. So this is just fantastic what people can do, and inform and also travel with companies who are committed with the conservation of the migratory species. I think that's just really important. You don't know how beautiful it is when our guests, after travel with us to the mountains of Mexico, after they seen the monarch butterfly phenomenon, they are like so motivated to do something in their community. Seriously, it's like a ripple effect that we are creating as a company. People from the office, expedition leaders, the local communities, they're working together in order to change the mentality of people. But at the end, we won't change if we are not convinced that this is actually a benefit for everyone, not only for animals, also for us. So I want to finish this presentation with this beautiful gift. So these are not human migratory paths. It's actually animal paths. Blue lines, pink lines, yellow lines, and green lines are just marking the migratory routes that birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians are taking between Mexico and US. So again, nature knows no borders. They don't know anything about limitations. They at the end what they do is they want to survive, and they just want to pass their genetic information to the next generations. And with that all being said, I need to say thank you to listen to this my presentation. Hope you like it. And that's it.
All right, Eric, thank you so much. Now, before we start in with some questions, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have some questions, feel free to submit them via the question field on your control panel in the upper right corner. All right, so let's get to some of these questions. Um, so we've got a couple of questions about um, when do the animals and birds and butterflies know when it's time to start migrating? For instance, some monarch butterflies will stop in Illinois and others will go all the way to Canada. How do they know where to stop and when to stop?
It is a really good question, and again, as a biologist, I need to say it depends on the species. For example, you're asking me about birds and water butterflies, but to be very specific, the water butterflies, they start to move once they notice that there's a decrease of the light in the daylight. So they notice that there's not so much light, and this particular thing is just immediately triggering this migratory behavior, just with the decrease of the daylight. That's it. Some other organisms, for example, is the temperature. They're very, very sensitive to the different variations of temperature. It's like, it's getting cold. I need to do something. It's already like these organisms are so hardwired to these conditions that they immediately, when they immediately feels these slightly variations, they will start to do something to prepare themselves to move.
So is it common, like the monarchs, for these migrating species to go to the same place every year, or are some different?
Yeah, they go to the same places, but they're not going in a big single group. So sometimes some early butterflies they will start to migrate southward, and then we have other pack, and then we have other group, and then we have another and another. They're not going like it's not like okay, you know what? It's getting colder, and we need to go all at once. No, they go in different groups, but they will actually reach the same place in the same places in Mexico. We have different monarch butterfly colonies already established there, and inside of the colony, they might choose different places to rust, and they will change these places throughout the season.
That's really intriguing. Thank you. So
Yeah.
you suggested a book earlier to us. Could you repeat the name of
Oh,
that book?
yes. The name of this book is An Immense World. World by Ed Jung, if I could, or yeah, the last name of the author is Jung, if I could remember. It's just let me check it. I have it here on my Kindle just to be more accurate with the description. An Immense World, yeah, by Ed Jung. Yeah, that's the author.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that. Well, unfortunately, it looks like that's all the questions that we do have for today. So I'd like to throw it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us today, Eric.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we need to be very empathetic with in terms of of natural world. I mean, sometimes we see us as a unique species that we can do whatever we want without any consequences, and I think we just need to see this as a very ecosystemic view where we are part of a whole thing. And these big examples remind us that diversity makes us stronger and not isolated populations. Yeah,
Eric, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with Nat Hab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us Monday for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out next week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you
yeah.
next time.